Most people spend their entire lives trying to add more things in order to feel happy. They chase more money, more possessions, more attention, more approval, more achievements, and more distractions. Society constantly tells you that happiness will finally arrive once you accumulate enough of these things. But according to the wisdom of the Buddha, true happiness does not come from adding more to your life. It comes from removing what does not belong. Much of the suffering people experience is not created by a lack of things, but by the presence of things that quietly disturb the mind. Toxic relationships, endless worries, unhealthy attachments, constant comparisons, and emotional burdens slowly begin to fill your life like unnecessary weight in a backpack. The Buddha taught that the path to peace is not about filling your life with more noise, but about clearing space for clarity, calm, and understanding. When you begin removing what no longer belongs in your life, something powerful starts to happen. Your mind becomes lighter, your emotions become calmer, and your life becomes simpler. In this video, you will discover 7 powerful Buddhist lessons that will help you remove the things that quietly steal your happiness and finally create space for peace, clarity, and true inner freedom. 1. Cluttered minds cannot hold happiness. One of the biggest reasons people struggle to feel happiness is because their mind is constantly filled with noise. Many people wake up in the morning and their thoughts immediately begin racing. They start thinking about unfinished work, past arguments, future problems, and things that might go wrong. Throughout the day, the mind keeps jumping from one worry to another. Even when nothing difficult is happening in the present moment, the mind continues creating stress by imagining problems that may never actually occur. The Buddha taught that much of human suffering is created by this restless activity of the mind. The mind keeps replaying old memories, analyzing situations again and again, and building stories about the future. Over time, this constant mental activity becomes exhausting. When the mind is always busy, there is very little space left for calmness, clarity, or happiness. Happiness begins to appear when you learn how to quiet unnecessary thoughts. This does not mean forcing your mind to become completely empty or trying to stop thinking altogether. Instead, it means becoming aware of your thoughts and learning not to follow every single one of them. When a worry appears, you simply notice it without letting it take control of your attention. As you practice this awareness, something slowly changes. You stop feeding every fear, every doubt, and every imagined problem. The mind gradually becomes less crowded and more peaceful. In that quiet space, clarity begins to appear, and when the mind becomes clear and calm, happiness starts to grow naturally. 2. Not every relationship is meant to stay. Another important truth the Buddha emphasized is that the people around you strongly influence the condition of your mind. Human beings are deeply affected by the energy, attitudes, and behaviors of the people they spend time with. When you are surrounded by supportive, kind, and respectful individuals, your mind naturally feels lighter and more peaceful. But when you are constantly around negativity, criticism, or emotional chaos, your mind slowly begins to carry that same heaviness. Many people remain connected to relationships that quietly drain their energy. Some people constantly judge, complain, or create unnecessary drama. Others may manipulate, disrespect boundaries, or make you feel smaller than you truly are. Over time, these interactions begin to affect your emotional well-being, even if you try to ignore them. The Buddha taught that wise people carefully choose the company they keep because relationships shape the direction of the mind. One reason people struggle to let go of unhealthy relationships is fear. They fear being alone, fear disappointing others, or feel a sense of obligation to stay connected no matter how they are treated. But protecting your peace sometimes requires difficult decisions. Letting go of certain relationships does not mean you hate the person or wish them harm. It simply means you recognize that their presence is no longer healthy for your life. When you begin removing relationships that constantly disturb your peace, something powerful happens. Your emotional space becomes clearer, your mind becomes calmer, and your energy is no longer drained by unnecessary conflict. This allows you to focus on relationships that truly bring respect, growth, and balance into your life. 3. Expectations create hidden frustration. Expectations often seem harmless, but they quietly become one of the biggest sources of disappointment in life. Many people create silent rules in their minds about how life should unfold. They expect people to behave in certain ways, expect situations to go according to their plans, and expect their efforts to always produce the results they imagined. When reality moves in a different direction, frustration, anger, and sadness quickly appear. The Buddha explained that much of our suffering comes from this attachment to expectations. The mind creates a picture of how things should be, and when life does not match that picture, we begin to feel upset. For example, someone may expect appreciation from others for their kindness, but when that appreciation does not come, they feel hurt. Another person may expect life to move smoothly, but when unexpected problems appear, they feel overwhelmed. The problem is not that having hopes or goals is wrong. The real problem is when our happiness becomes dependent on everything going exactly as we planned. Life is unpredictable, and people will not always behave the way we expect them to. When the mind clings tightly to expectations, every small disappointment begins to feel much larger than it actually is. When you start releasing rigid expectations, your mind becomes more flexible and peaceful. You still work toward your goals and make plans for the future, but you no longer demand that life must follow a perfect script. Instead of reacting with frustration, you learn to accept situations as they come and respond with calmness and understanding. This shift allows happiness to grow more easily because your peace is no longer controlled by whether life meets your expectations or not. 4. Comparison quietly destroys your happiness. One of the most powerful ways happiness disappears from a person's life is through comparison. Many people spend a large part of their time looking at what others are doing and measuring their own lives against it. They compare their success, their income, their appearance, their relationships, and even their happiness. At first, this habit may seem harmless, but over time it quietly steals peace from the mind. The Buddha understood this deeply. He taught that much of human dissatisfaction comes from the habit of constantly looking outward instead of inward. When a person is always focused on what others have or what others are achieving, their mind slowly becomes filled with feelings of inadequacy and frustration. Even when their own life is going well, comparison can make it feel like it is not enough. In today's world, this habit has become even stronger. People constantly see images of success, luxury, and happiness from others. They see someone traveling to beautiful places, someone buying a new car, someone celebrating achievements, or someone living a lifestyle that appears perfect. The mind begins to quietly ask, "Why is my life not like that?" Without realizing it, a person begins to feel dissatisfied with things that once made them happy. The truth is that comparison is a trap that never leads to peace. No matter how successful a person becomes, there will always be someone who appears to have more. Someone will always seem richer, more talented, more attractive, or more accomplished. If your happiness depends on being better than others, then happiness will always remain unstable. The Buddha encouraged people to return their attention to their own path. Every person's journey is different. Every life moves at a different pace and faces different challenges. When you constantly compare yourself with others, you are measuring your unique journey against circumstances that are completely different from your own. A tree does not compare itself with the tree growing beside it. One tree may grow taller, another may grow wider, and another may bloom earlier. Yet each one grows according to its own nature. Human life is the same. When you stop comparing your progress with others, you begin to understand your own direction more clearly. When comparison disappears, something important happens inside the mind. The pressure to compete fades away. The feeling of not being enough begins to dissolve. Instead of constantly looking at other people's lives, you begin focusing on improving your own life, step by step. Your energy returns to your own growth, your own values, and your own goals. This creates a sense of calm and confidence that comparison could never provide. The Buddha taught that true happiness grows when a person walks their path with awareness and gratitude instead of constantly measuring themselves against others. When you remove comparison from your life, you remove one of the heaviest burdens the mind carries. And when that burden disappears, happiness begins to grow much more naturally. 5. Let go of the past that no longer exists. One of the heaviest burdens people carry in life is not something physical, but something mental. It is the weight of the past. Many people continue to relive moments that happened years ago as if those events are still happening today. They replay old mistakes, revisit painful conversations, and think again and again about things they wish they had done differently. Even though those moments are long gone, the mind continues to hold on to them. The Buddha taught that this attachment to the past is one of the hidden sources of suffering. The past itself no longer exists. It is only a memory stored in the mind. Yet many people allow these memories to control their emotions and shape their present experience. A single mistake from years ago can still create guilt. A painful event can still produce anger. A lost opportunity can still create regret. Because the mind keeps returning to these memories, the suffering continues even though the event has already ended. Imagine walking forward while carrying a heavy bag on your back that you never put down. At first, the weight might seem manageable, but over time, it begins to exhaust you. Your steps become slower, your energy disappears, and every movement becomes more difficult. Holding on to the past works in a similar way. Each memory of regret, resentment, or shame adds another weight to the mind. Many people believe that constantly thinking about the past will somehow change it or fix it. They analyze situations again and again, hoping to find the perfect answer that will make them feel better. But no amount of thinking can change something that has already happened. The more the mind tries to fight with the past, the more trapped it becomes inside it. The Buddha explained that true freedom begins when you learn to release your grip on these memories. Letting go does not mean pretending the past never happened. It does not mean ignoring the lessons you learned from it. Instead, it means accepting that the past has already completed its role in your life and no longer needs to control your present moment. Every experience, even painful ones, can carry a lesson. Sometimes the lesson is about patience. Sometimes it teaches strength. Sometimes it reveals the kind of people you should avoid or the kind of choices you should make differently in the future. Once that lesson is understood, there is no longer a reason to continue carrying the emotional weight of the event. When you begin practicing this kind of release, something powerful happens. The mind slowly stops returning to the same painful memories. The emotional intensity connected to those events begins to fade. What once felt like a deep wound gradually becomes a quiet memory that no longer controls your thoughts. The present moment is the only place where life is truly happening. Yet many people miss it because their attention is trapped in what already happened. The Buddha encouraged people to bring their awareness back to the present again and again, because this is the only place where peace can exist. When you release the constant grip on the past, your mind becomes lighter. Your attention returns to what is happening right now. Instead of living inside old memories, you begin experiencing life directly as it unfolds. This shift allows calmness and clarity to appear naturally. Happiness often begins not when something new enters your life, but when an old weight finally leaves your mind. When you stop carrying the past everywhere you go, you create space for peace, growth, and new possibilities. And in that space, happiness quietly begins to grow again. 6. The freedom of simplicity. One of the quiet truths that the Buddha taught is that happiness becomes difficult to find when life becomes unnecessarily complicated. Many people believe that a full and busy life automatically leads to a meaningful and happy life. They constantly add more responsibilities, more possessions, more goals, more distractions, and more commitments, thinking that each new addition will make life richer. But over time, something very different begins to happen. Instead of feeling fulfilled, they begin to feel overwhelmed. Their mind becomes restless, their attention becomes scattered, and the sense of calm they once had slowly disappears. The modern world encourages this constant accumulation. Everywhere people look, they are told that they need more things to feel complete. They are encouraged to chase success without pause, to constantly improve their image, to collect possessions, and to keep up with the pace of everyone around them. Slowly, life becomes filled with endless noise. The mind jumps from task to task, from screen to screen, from worry to worry. In such an environment, peace becomes very difficult to experience. The Buddha saw this pattern clearly long before the modern world existed. He understood that the mind cannot remain calm when it is constantly pulled in many directions. When life becomes too crowded with unnecessary activities, the mind loses its ability to rest. A restless mind struggles to feel happiness because it never has the opportunity to settle into stillness. Simplicity is not about rejecting the world or giving up everything you have. Instead, it is about removing what is unnecessary so that what truly matters can become clear. When you simplify your life, you begin to see which things truly bring meaning and which things only create distraction. Many people are surprised when they realize that a large part of their stress comes from things they never truly needed in the first place. For example, many people fill their schedules so tightly that they barely have time to breathe. They rush from one responsibility to another, constantly thinking about what comes next. Even when they are resting, their mind continues thinking about unfinished tasks. Over time, this constant activity creates exhaustion. The mind never feels fully relaxed because it is always preparing for the next demand. When life becomes simpler, this pressure begins to ease. By reducing unnecessary commitments and distractions, the mind slowly begins to calm down. There is more space in the day to think clearly, to rest deeply, and to experience the present moment without constant urgency. Possessions can also create hidden complexity. Many people believe that owning more things will improve their lives, but every possession carries responsibility. It must be maintained, organized, protected, and sometimes worried about. When a person accumulates too many possessions, they may spend a large part of their life managing those things rather than truly enjoying them. Simplicity helps remove this burden. When you begin letting go of things that no longer serve a meaningful purpose, your environment becomes lighter and easier to manage. This creates a feeling of order that quietly supports a calmer mind. The Buddha also emphasized simplicity in the way people relate to their desires. Desire itself is not always harmful, but constant craving can create endless dissatisfaction. When the mind is always searching for the next thing it wants, it rarely feels satisfied with what already exists. A person may achieve one goal, but instead of feeling content, the mind immediately creates another desire that must be fulfilled. Simplicity breaks this cycle. When you learn to appreciate what already exists in your life, the endless chase begins to slow down. Gratitude starts to replace constant craving. You begin to notice that many simple experiences carry a deep sense of peace that no material object can provide. A quiet morning can bring calm to the mind. A walk through nature can restore a sense of balance. A meaningful conversation with someone you trust can bring more happiness than many expensive possessions. These simple moments often hold the kind of peace that people spend years searching for in more complicated ways. The problem is not that happiness is difficult to find. The problem is that people often make life so complicated that they cannot see the happiness already present around them. When life becomes simpler, attention returns to the present moment. Instead of constantly worrying about what comes next, the mind begins to settle into what is happening now. You become more aware of small details that once went unnoticed. The warmth of sunlight, the sound of wind moving through trees, the calm feeling of taking a slow breath. These simple experiences begin to feel meaningful again. Simplicity also strengthens clarity. When the mind is not overwhelmed by distractions, it becomes easier to see what truly matters. Your values become clearer. Your priorities become easier to understand. Decisions become less confusing because the mind is not clouded by endless noise. Many people believe that a simple life is a small life, but the Buddha showed that the opposite is often true. Simplicity does not reduce the richness of life. Instead, it removes the unnecessary layers that hide the beauty of life. When you simplify your habits, your environment, and your expectations, you begin to experience a sense of freedom that is difficult to describe. Your mind no longer feels pulled in many directions. Your attention becomes steady. Your thoughts become clearer. This kind of clarity allows happiness to grow naturally. Instead of constantly chasing it, you begin to notice it appearing in ordinary moments. Life starts to feel less rushed and more meaningful. The freedom of simplicity is not about having less for the sake of deprivation. It is about having space to breathe, space to think clearly, space to experience life without constant pressure. The Buddha taught that when unnecessary complexity disappears, peace becomes much easier to find. And when peace becomes part of your daily life, happiness no longer feels distant. It begins to appear quietly, naturally, and consistently. In a world that constantly encourages more, choosing simplicity becomes an act of wisdom. By removing what does not truly belong in your life, you create space for calmness, clarity, and genuine happiness to grow. 7. Protecting your peace protects your happiness. One of the deepest truths taught in Buddhist wisdom is that happiness cannot exist for long without inner peace. Many people spend their lives chasing happiness through achievements, possessions, relationships, and constant activity. They believe that if they collect enough good experiences, happiness will naturally follow. But the Buddha explained something very important. Happiness is not something that can survive in a mind that is constantly disturbed. When the mind is filled with conflict, stress, anger, and emotional chaos, happiness has no place to stay. This is why protecting your inner peace is one of the most important responsibilities you have in life. Peace is not something that simply appears by chance. It must be protected through awareness, discipline, and wise choices. Many people lose their peace because they allow too many things to enter their lives without questioning whether those things truly belong there. Consider how easily the mind becomes disturbed by small events. A single harsh comment from someone can occupy the mind for hours. A disagreement can replay again and again in your thoughts. Someone's criticism can make you question your worth. These moments may seem small, but when they accumulate day after day, they slowly create emotional turbulence that steals your calm. The Buddha taught that the mind becomes peaceful when it learns not to react blindly to everything that happens. Most people believe they must respond to every comment, defend themselves in every argument, and correct every misunderstanding. But reacting to everything only traps the mind in endless conflict. When you begin protecting your peace, you start choosing your responses more carefully. You realize that not every opinion deserves your attention, and not every conflict deserves your energy. Sometimes the wisest response is silence. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to step away. This does not mean becoming weak or passive. It means becoming wise about where your energy goes. Your attention and emotional energy are valuable resources. When they are constantly spent on arguments, negativity, and unnecessary drama, very little energy remains for the things that truly matter in your life. Many people feel exhausted not because life itself is too difficult, but because they are constantly fighting battles that never needed to be fought. Protecting your peace often requires learning the power of boundaries. Boundaries are not walls meant to punish others. They are limits that protect your mental and emotional well-being. When someone repeatedly disturbs your peace through disrespect, manipulation, or negativity, a boundary helps you decide how much influence that behavior will have on your life. Without boundaries, the mind becomes vulnerable to every emotional storm that appears. Other people's moods, opinions, and actions begin to control how you feel. But when you develop clear boundaries, you create a space where your peace can remain stable even when the world around you becomes chaotic. The Buddha often emphasized the importance of right association. The people you spend time with strongly influence the quality of your mind. When you surround yourself with individuals who constantly complain, criticize, and spread negativity, your mind gradually absorbs that same atmosphere. But when you spend time with people who bring calmness, kindness, and understanding into your life, your mind becomes more peaceful and balanced. Protecting your peace sometimes means choosing carefully who you allow into your inner circle. Another important part of protecting peace is learning when to let go of control. Many people become anxious because they try to control situations that are completely outside their power. They want others to behave in certain ways, want life to follow specific plans, and want every situation to unfold exactly as expected. But reality rarely moves according to our wishes. The Buddha taught that suffering often appears when we cling too tightly to control. The more we try to force life to behave according to our expectations, the more tension we create inside our own mind. Peace becomes possible when we accept that many things in life will move beyond our control. When you release the need to control everything, the mind relaxes. You begin focusing your energy only on the things you can truly influence: your actions, your responses, and your perspective. Another threat to peace is constant mental distraction. The modern world constantly demands attention. News, social media, endless information, and constant communication pull the mind in many directions. Each new piece of information can trigger emotional reactions, worries, or comparisons. Over time, this constant stimulation makes it difficult for the mind to rest. Protecting your peace means becoming aware of what you allow into your mind. Just as you would protect your home from unnecessary noise or chaos, you must also protect your mind from influences that disturb its balance. This may mean limiting exposure to negativity, reducing distractions, and creating moments of quiet reflection during the day. Silence plays an important role in protecting peace. In silence, the mind has an opportunity to slow down and return to its natural balance. When you spend a few moments each day simply breathing and observing your thoughts, you begin to reconnect with the calm that already exists within you. Many people search for peace somewhere outside themselves, but the Buddha taught that peace is already present inside the mind when it is not disturbed. Protecting your peace also means learning forgiveness. Holding on to anger and resentment keeps the mind trapped in past conflicts. Every time you replay an old argument or remember someone who hurt you, your mind relives that pain again. Forgiveness does not mean approving harmful behavior. It means freeing your mind from the emotional chains that keep you connected to that pain. When you forgive, you are not giving a gift to the person who hurt you. You are giving freedom to your own mind. Gradually, as you begin protecting your peace more carefully, something powerful begins to happen. The mind becomes steadier. Emotional storms that once felt overwhelming begin to pass more quickly. Situations that once created intense reactions begin to lose their power over you. Happiness begins to appear naturally in this peaceful environment. Instead of constantly chasing happiness, you begin experiencing it in simple moments throughout the day. A quiet moment of reflection, a calm walk outside, a conversation that brings understanding. These experiences begin to feel deeply fulfilling because the mind is no longer distracted by constant turmoil. The Buddha taught that happiness grows where peace is protected. If peace is disturbed again and again, happiness struggles to survive. But when peace becomes stable, happiness begins to grow like a plant in healthy soil. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It is necessary for living a balanced and meaningful life. When your mind is calm and stable, you are able to respond to the world with greater patience, compassion, and wisdom. In this way, peace not only protects your happiness, it also strengthens the way you live and interact with others. When you remove unnecessary conflict, unnecessary worries, and unnecessary distractions from your life, your inner world becomes quieter and clearer. In that quiet space, happiness does not need to be forced or chased. It simply appears, gently and naturally, as a result of the peace you have learned to protect. 8. Remove the desire to control everything. One of the quiet struggles that steals happiness from many people is the constant desire to control everything around them. People often believe that if they can manage every situation, guide every outcome, and influence every person around them, life will become stable and predictable. They try to control how others behave, how events unfold, and how the future should look. At first, this may seem like responsibility or careful planning, but over time, it slowly turns into a source of deep frustration. The Buddha taught that suffering often grows from attachment, and one of the strongest attachments the human mind develops is the attachment to control. The mind creates an image of how life should unfold and becomes deeply attached to that image. It believes that happiness will appear once everything follows the expected plan. But life rarely follows the exact path we imagine. Unexpected changes happen. People act in ways we cannot predict. Circumstances shift without warning. When reality moves in a different direction from the plan we created in our mind, tension and disappointment begin to appear. Many people do not realize how exhausting this constant need for control can be. The mind becomes restless because it is always trying to predict what might go wrong and how to prevent it. It constantly analyzes situations, rehearses conversations, and prepares responses for things that may never even happen. Instead of experiencing life as it unfolds, the mind becomes trapped in endless preparation and worry. Imagine trying to control the movement of the ocean. No matter how much effort you apply, the waves will continue to rise and fall according to forces far greater than your own. In the same way, many aspects of life move according to conditions that are far beyond your control. When you try to force life into a rigid structure, you create resistance against the natural flow of events. The Buddha encouraged people to develop wisdom about what can and cannot be controlled. Some things are within your influence. Your actions, your words, your intentions, and your attitude toward situations are all within your power. But many other things lie completely outside your reach. The thoughts of other people, the decisions they make, the opinions they hold, and the events that occur in the world cannot always be directed by your will. When people fail to recognize this difference, they waste enormous amounts of emotional energy trying to control what cannot be controlled. They become frustrated when others behave differently than expected. They become anxious when plans change. They feel anger when circumstances move beyond their influence. Over time, this constant tension creates a heavy burden on the mind. True freedom begins when you start releasing the illusion that you must control everything in order to feel safe or happy. This does not mean becoming careless or abandoning responsibility. Instead, it means shifting your focus toward the areas where your influence truly exists. When you focus on your actions instead of trying to control outcomes, the mind becomes calmer. You begin doing your best in each moment without becoming attached to how things must unfold afterward. This approach allows you to remain steady even when circumstances change. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of acceptance. Acceptance does not mean giving up or becoming passive. It means recognizing reality as it is instead of constantly fighting against it. When you accept that change is part of life, unexpected events no longer feel like personal attacks against your plans. Life becomes easier to navigate when you stop demanding that every situation follow your expectations. Instead of reacting with frustration, you learn to adapt. You begin responding to situations with awareness rather than resistance. Another reason the desire for control becomes so powerful is fear. Many people believe that controlling everything will protect them from uncertainty or failure. They think that if they can manage every detail, nothing bad will happen. But the truth is that uncertainty is a natural part of life. Trying to eliminate uncertainty completely only creates more anxiety. When you learn to accept uncertainty, something interesting begins to happen. The mind becomes more flexible. Instead of constantly guarding against possible problems, you develop confidence in your ability to respond when situations arise. This confidence creates a sense of inner stability that control could never provide. The Buddha taught that peace comes from understanding the impermanent nature of life. Everything in life changes. Circumstances shift, people evolve, and situations transform in ways we cannot fully predict. When you resist this natural process, suffering appears. But when you accept the changing nature of life, your mind becomes more adaptable and resilient. Letting go of excessive control also improves relationships. Many conflicts arise because people try to control each other's behavior. They expect others to think, speak, and act exactly as they wish. When those expectations are not met, arguments and misunderstandings quickly appear. But when you release the need to control others, relationships become more peaceful. You allow people to be who they are instead of constantly trying to shape them according to your expectations. This creates space for mutual respect and understanding. In the same way, releasing control over the future allows you to experience the present moment more fully. Many people spend so much time worrying about what might happen tomorrow that they forget to experience what is happening today. The mind becomes trapped in endless planning and prediction. When you let go of this constant need to control the future, your awareness returns to the present moment. You begin noticing details that were previously overlooked. Conversations feel more meaningful. Moments of quiet become more peaceful. Life begins to feel less rushed and more alive. The Buddha did not teach people to stop caring about their lives or their responsibilities. Instead, he taught them to act with effort and wisdom while remaining free from attachment to specific outcomes. This balance allows a person to work toward their goals without becoming emotionally trapped by success or failure. When you remove the desire to control everything, a surprising sense of relief appears. The mind no longer feels responsible for managing the entire world. You begin trusting that life can unfold without constant interference from your fears and expectations. This shift brings a new kind of freedom. You still make plans, pursue goals, and take action when necessary, but your happiness no longer depends on everything going exactly as expected. When challenges appear, you respond calmly instead of reacting with panic. Gradually, life begins to feel lighter. The tension created by constant control slowly disappears. The mind becomes more relaxed and open to the natural flow of experiences. Happiness often appears when you stop trying to force life into a perfect shape and begin allowing it to unfold naturally. When you remove the heavy burden of controlling everything, you create space for peace, trust, and balance to grow. And in that peaceful space, happiness begins to appear not as something you must chase, but as something that quietly grows within a calm and accepting mind. 9. Let go of the need for approval. One of the most common burdens people carry throughout their lives is the constant desire to be approved by others. Many people shape their choices, behaviors, and even their identity around what others might think of them. They speak carefully so that no one criticizes them. They make decisions based on what will please others, and they often hide their true feelings because they fear rejection. At first, this may appear to be kindness or politeness, but over time it quietly becomes a prison for the mind. The Buddha taught that suffering often arises when a person depends on external validation to feel worthy or complete. When your happiness depends on how others judge you, your peace becomes fragile. Every compliment may lift your mood for a moment, but every criticism can quickly destroy your confidence. In this way, your emotional balance becomes controlled by the opinions of people around you. Many people do not realize how deeply this habit influences their lives. From a young age, individuals are taught to seek approval from parents, teachers, and society. They learn that being accepted means following certain expectations. Over time, the mind becomes conditioned to constantly ask, "What will others think of me?" Instead of asking whether something is right or meaningful for them, they begin measuring their life according to the reactions of others. The problem with this way of living is that the opinions of people are constantly changing. One person may admire something about you, while another person criticizes the exact same thing. If your happiness depends on pleasing everyone, you will quickly discover that such a goal is impossible. No matter how carefully you behave, someone will always disagree with you, misunderstand you, or judge you unfairly. The Buddha encouraged people to build their lives on wisdom rather than approval. Wisdom means understanding your values clearly and acting according to them, even when others do not fully understand your choices. When you live according to your inner understanding, instead of chasing constant validation, the mind becomes more stable. The desire for approval often pushes people to live lives that do not truly belong to them. Someone may choose a career because it impresses others, rather than because it brings personal fulfillment. Another person may remain in relationships that no longer feel healthy, simply because they fear how others might react if they walk away. Over time, these choices slowly disconnect a person from their authentic self. When you begin releasing the need for approval, something important happens. You start making decisions based on clarity instead of fear. Instead of constantly adjusting yourself to meet other people's expectations, you begin asking what truly aligns with your values and well-being. This shift does not mean ignoring others or behaving selfishly. Compassion and kindness remain important qualities in Buddhist teaching, but there is a difference between caring about others and becoming controlled by their opinions. When compassion guides your actions, you act with respect and understanding. But when approval controls your actions, you begin sacrificing your authenticity in order to avoid judgment. Another reason the desire for approval becomes so strong is that many people confuse approval with belonging. They believe that if they are not constantly accepted and praised, they will become isolated or rejected. But true belonging does not require constant approval. Real connections are built on honesty and mutual respect, not on pretending to be someone else. When you stop chasing approval, your relationships often become more genuine. People begin to see the real person behind the mask that was once created to please everyone. Some individuals may not understand this change, but the relationships that remain will often become deeper and more meaningful. The Buddha also reminded people that everyone carries their own perspective, shaped by their experiences, beliefs, and emotions. Because of this, it is impossible to control how others interpret your actions. Someone may misunderstand your intentions even when you act with kindness. Another person may criticize you simply because your choices challenge their expectations. Trying to control these judgments only leads to endless stress. But when you accept that opinions are beyond your control, the mind becomes lighter. You no longer feel responsible for managing how every person perceives you. This freedom allows you to focus on something far more important: living with integrity. Integrity means aligning your actions with your values, even when recognition or praise is absent. When your behavior is guided by honesty, compassion, and wisdom, your sense of self becomes stronger than any external opinion. Gradually, as you release the need for approval, your confidence begins to grow. This confidence is different from arrogance. It is a quiet inner stability that comes from knowing who you are and why you make the choices you make. Instead of constantly looking outward for validation, you begin trusting your own understanding. This inner trust creates a deep sense of peace. Criticism no longer shakes you as strongly as before, because your self-worth is no longer tied to the approval of others. Compliments are still appreciated, but they are no longer necessary for your happiness. The Buddha described this state as a form of inner freedom. When your mind is no longer attached to praise or blame, success or failure, approval or rejection, you begin living with greater balance. Your emotions become less reactive because your identity is no longer built on the shifting opinions of the world. Another benefit of releasing the need for approval is that it allows creativity and growth to flourish. When people are constantly worried about being judged, they hesitate to try new things. Fear of criticism prevents them from exploring their full potential. But when approval is no longer the main goal, curiosity and courage naturally increase. You become more willing to learn, experiment, and improve because mistakes no longer threaten your sense of worth. Each experience becomes an opportunity for growth rather than a test of whether others will approve. Over time, this mindset creates a deeper sense of self-respect. Self-respect grows when you honor your values and live honestly. It grows when you refuse to abandon your truth simply to gain temporary acceptance. This form of respect cannot be taken away by criticism because it is built from within. The Buddha taught that true peace comes from understanding the nature of the mind and freeing it from attachments that create suffering. The need for approval is one of these attachments. When you remove it, the mind becomes more independent and calm. You begin living with a sense of quiet confidence rather than constant insecurity. Your decisions become clearer because they are guided by wisdom instead of fear. Your relationships become more authentic because they are no longer built on performance. Most importantly, happiness begins to grow in a more stable way. Instead of rising and falling according to the opinions of others, your happiness becomes rooted in your own understanding of what it means to live well. When you remove the heavy burden of seeking approval from everyone around you, life begins to feel lighter and more honest. You no longer need to prove your worth through constant validation. You simply live, guided by awareness, integrity, and inner peace. And in that freedom, happiness naturally begins to grow. 10. Remove the habit of holding on. One of the deepest teachings in Buddhism is the understanding that much of human suffering comes from the habit of holding on too tightly. People hold on to relationships that have already changed, hold on to expectations that reality cannot fulfill, hold on to painful memories, and hold on to identities that no longer reflect who they truly are. The mind believes that by holding on, it will protect itself from loss or uncertainty. But in reality, this attachment often becomes the very source of suffering. The Buddha explained that life is constantly changing. Everything in existence moves through cycles of appearance, transformation, and disappearance. Seasons change, circumstances shift, People grow and evolve, and situations that once seemed permanent eventually transform. When the mind refuses to accept this natural process, it begins to resist reality itself. Imagine holding a handful of sand in your palm. If you keep your hand open and relaxed, the sand rests easily in your hand. But the moment you close your fist and try to hold it tightly, the sand begins slipping through your fingers. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. In many ways, human attachment works in a similar way. The more tightly the mind clings to things, the more tension and suffering it creates. Many people hold on to situations long after they have naturally ended. A relationship may have changed years ago, yet the mind continues wishing it could return to the way it once was. A missed opportunity may have passed long ago, yet regret continues to replay in the mind again and again. A painful event may have already ended, yet resentment continues to occupy emotional space. The Buddha taught that clinging to what has already passed is like trying to stop a river from flowing. No matter how much effort you apply, the current of life will continue moving forward. Fighting against this movement only exhausts the mind. Letting go does not mean that something never mattered. It simply means understanding that everything in life has its time. Some experiences come into our lives to teach us lessons. Some relationships help us grow for a period of time. Some opportunities appear briefly and then disappear. When their role is complete, holding on to them no longer brings peace. One reason people struggle to let go is because they associate letting go with loss. The mind believes that releasing something means giving up something valuable. But the Buddha encouraged people to see letting go from a different perspective. Letting go is not always about losing something. Often, it is about freeing yourself from unnecessary suffering. When the mind releases its grip on what cannot be changed, it becomes lighter. Emotional space opens where tension once existed. Energy that was previously trapped in regret, anger, or longing begins to return to the present moment. Another important reason people hold on is the fear of uncertainty. When something ends or changes, the mind often fears what will come next. It may prefer the familiarity of an unhappy situation rather than the uncertainty of something new. This is why some people remain in unhealthy environments or continue repeating patterns that no longer serve them. But growth requires movement. Just as a tree must shed old leaves to make space for new ones, human life also requires periods of release in order for renewal to occur. When you let go of something that no longer belongs in your life, you create space for something healthier to grow. The Buddha often spoke about impermanence, which is the understanding that all things are temporary. This truth can feel uncomfortable at first, but it also carries a powerful form of freedom. When you understand that everything changes, you stop demanding permanence from situations that are naturally temporary. This understanding allows you to appreciate experiences more deeply while they exist, without becoming trapped by the fear of losing them. Instead of clinging to moments, you begin experiencing them fully as they arise. Letting go also strengthens emotional resilience. When people become attached to a specific outcome or situation, any change can feel like a personal crisis. But when the mind learns to release attachment, it becomes more flexible and adaptable. Challenges may still appear, but they no longer feel overwhelming because the mind is not fighting against reality. Forgiveness is another powerful form of letting go. Many people hold on to anger toward those who have hurt them. They replay past conflicts and carry resentment for years. While this anger may feel justified, it quietly traps the mind in the past. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting what happened or pretending the pain was acceptable. Instead, it means choosing not to carry that pain indefinitely. When you forgive, you release the emotional burden that ties you to the past. The Buddha taught that anger harms the person who holds it more than the person it is directed toward. Releasing anger frees your own mind from the cycle of bitterness. Letting go also applies to the identity we build about ourselves. Many people define themselves by past failures, past labels, or past expectations. Someone who struggled in the past may continue believing they are incapable of success. Someone who experienced rejection may continue believing they are unworthy of love. But the Buddha reminded people that the self is not fixed or permanent. Human beings constantly grow and change. When you release the identity shaped by past experiences, you allow yourself the freedom to become something new. Another benefit of letting go is the return of presence. When the mind is constantly clinging to the past or worrying about what it might lose in the future, it becomes disconnected from the present moment. Life continues unfolding around you, but your attention remains trapped in memories or fears. When you begin letting go, your awareness returns to what is happening right now. The present moment becomes clearer and more meaningful. Instead of being lost in thoughts about what was or what might be, you begin experiencing life directly as it unfolds. The Buddha described this state as a form of liberation. The mind becomes free from the chains created by attachment and resistance. This freedom does not remove all challenges from life, but it allows you to face them with calmness rather than struggle. Happiness begins to grow naturally when the mind is no longer weighed down by endless attachment. Instead of constantly trying to hold on to everything, you learn to flow with the changing nature of life. You begin understanding that peace does not come from controlling or preserving everything around you. It comes from accepting change and allowing life to move forward. When you remove the habit of holding on too tightly, life becomes lighter. The mind stops fighting against reality and begins working with it instead. And in that openness, where the mind is no longer chained by attachment, happiness begins to appear quietly and naturally. 11. Remove the illusion that happiness is somewhere else. One of the quiet illusions that keeps many people restless throughout their lives is the belief that happiness exists somewhere else. People often believe that happiness will finally arrive when they reach a certain point in the future. They tell themselves that they will be happy once they achieve a specific goal, earn more money, move to a different place, find the perfect relationship, or solve every problem in their lives. Until then, they continue pushing happiness further away, always believing it will appear later. The Buddha taught that this way of thinking creates a subtle but powerful form of suffering. When the mind constantly believes that happiness exists somewhere else or sometime in the future, it becomes unable to experience the peace that is already available in the present moment. Life becomes a continuous chase, where each achievement briefly feels satisfying but quickly leads to the next desire. Many people experience this pattern without realizing it. A person might spend years working toward a promotion, believing that reaching that position will finally bring satisfaction. When the promotion arrives, they may feel proud for a short time, but soon the mind begins focusing on the next goal, the next improvement, or the next achievement that must be reached before happiness can truly begin. This cycle can repeat throughout an entire lifetime. The mind constantly postpones happiness, believing that fulfillment lies just beyond the next milestone. But when that milestone is reached, the mind simply creates another one. The Buddha explained that this endless chase is rooted in craving. Craving is the constant desire for something that we believe will complete us. It convinces the mind that the present moment is not enough and that something more is required before peace can be experienced. But when the mind becomes trapped in this pattern, it overlooks a powerful truth. Happiness is not something that can only exist in the future. It is something that becomes visible when the mind learns to appreciate the present moment. Consider how often people overlook the simple experiences that quietly contain happiness. A calm morning before the world becomes busy. The sound of rain falling outside. A peaceful walk where the mind can finally slow down. a conversation with someone who truly listens. These moments often pass unnoticed because the mind is too busy thinking about the future. The Buddha encouraged people to bring their awareness back to the present moment because this is the only place where life truly unfolds. The past exists only as memory, and the future exists only as imagination. The present moment is the only reality we can directly experience. When the mind becomes fully present, even ordinary moments begin to feel meaningful. The breath becomes calm, the senses become more aware, the mind stops rushing ahead and begins to experience life as it is happening. This does not mean that goals and ambitions should disappear. The Buddha did not teach people to abandon their responsibilities or their aspirations. Instead, he encouraged a different relationship with these pursuits. Goals can guide your actions, but they should not become conditions for your happiness. When happiness becomes dependent on achieving certain outcomes, it becomes fragile. If those outcomes are delayed or do not appear as expected, frustration quickly follows. But when happiness is rooted in awareness and gratitude for the present moment, it becomes more stable and resilient. Another reason people believe happiness exists somewhere else is comparison. When they see others appearing successful or joyful, they may assume that happiness exists in the circumstances those people have. They begin believing that if they could reach the same situation, they would finally feel complete. But this belief often overlooks the complexity of human experience. Every person carries their own struggles, uncertainties, and inner challenges. What appears perfect from the outside rarely tells the whole story. The Buddha taught that chasing external conditions will never fully satisfy the mind, because the mind will always create new desires. Instead of trying to arrange the world perfectly, he encouraged people to cultivate inner understanding and contentment. Contentment does not mean giving up on growth or improvement. It means recognizing that peace does not depend entirely on external circumstances. A person can still pursue meaningful goals while maintaining appreciation for what already exists in their life. Gratitude plays a powerful role in this process. When the mind regularly reflects on what is already present, health, relationships, opportunities, or simple daily experiences, it begins shifting its attention away from constant dissatisfaction. Instead of focusing only on what is missing, the mind becomes aware of what is already here. Another illusion that pushes happiness into the future is the belief that life must become perfect before peace can appear. Many people believe they must eliminate every difficulty before they can relax. They imagine that happiness will finally arrive once every problem is solved. But the Buddha reminded people that life will always include challenges. Uncertainty, change, and imperfection are natural parts of existence. Waiting for a perfect moment before allowing yourself to feel happiness means postponing happiness indefinitely. True peace grows when the mind learns to remain balanced, even when life includes imperfections. When you stop searching for happiness somewhere else, a surprising realization begins to appear. Many moments that once seemed ordinary begin to feel valuable. The mind becomes less distracted by constant longing and more open to the richness of daily life. The warmth of sunlight, the calm rhythm of breathing, the quiet presence of nature, and the feeling of stillness in a peaceful moment all begin to feel more meaningful when the mind is no longer rushing toward the future. The Buddha described this awareness as a form of awakening. Awakening does not necessarily mean discovering something extraordinary outside yourself. Often it means realizing that the peace you were searching for was never truly absent. It was simply hidden behind the restless activity of the mind. When the mind stops chasing happiness as if it were somewhere else, it begins to notice the quiet satisfaction already present in simple experiences. Gradually, life begins to feel less like a race and more like a journey that can be appreciated step by step. Goals remain important, but they no longer dominate the mind. The present moment becomes the place where meaning is found. In this way, happiness stops feeling distant or unreachable. It becomes something that grows naturally within a calm and attentive mind. The Buddha taught that when you remove the illusion that happiness exists somewhere else, you stop endlessly chasing it. Instead, you begin discovering it in the life that is already unfolding around you. And in that realization, the restless search for happiness slowly transforms into a quiet experience of peace. 12. Remove the fear of being alone. One of the quiet fears that shapes many human decisions is the fear of being alone. Many people hold on to relationships, environments, and habits that disturb their peace simply because they are afraid of loneliness. They believe that being surrounded by others automatically protects them from feeling empty. But the Buddha taught that loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness comes from feeling disconnected from yourself, while solitude can become a powerful source of clarity and inner strength. Many people spend their lives trying to avoid silence. They fill their days with constant conversation, distractions, noise, and social interaction because being alone with their own thoughts feels uncomfortable. When the mind finally becomes quiet, unresolved emotions, worries, and uncertainties often begin to surface. Instead of facing these inner experiences, many people quickly seek more distraction. The Buddha understood that the mind often fears stillness because stillness reveals what has been hidden beneath the surface. But he also taught that solitude is one of the most powerful opportunities for understanding the mind. When you spend time alone in a peaceful and mindful way, you begin to observe your thoughts more clearly. Without the constant influence of other people's opinions and expectations, your own inner voice becomes easier to hear. For many people, the fear of being alone leads them to remain in relationships that quietly drain their energy. They may stay with friends who constantly bring negativity into their lives, partners who do not respect them, or environments that prevent them from growing. The fear of losing companionship feels stronger than the desire for inner peace. But the Buddha reminded people that the quality of your company matters more than the quantity. Being surrounded by people does not automatically create happiness. If the relationships around you are filled with conflict, pressure, or disrespect, the mind can feel even more lonely than when it is physically alone. Solitude, when understood correctly, creates a different experience. In solitude, you begin reconnecting with yourself. You learn to understand your own thoughts, values, and emotions without constant interference from external noise. This process allows the mind to settle and become more stable. Another reason people fear being alone is because society often portrays solitude as something negative. Many people believe that being alone means they have failed in some way or that they are missing something important. They may compare themselves with others who appear constantly surrounded by friends and social activity, assuming that those people must be happier. But appearances rarely reveal the deeper reality of someone's inner world. A person can be surrounded by many people and still feel disconnected from themselves. At the same time, someone who spends time alone can experience deep peace and clarity. The Buddha often spent long periods in solitude because he understood that quiet reflection strengthens the mind. In silence, the mind becomes less reactive. Without constant stimulation, thoughts begin to slow down and emotional patterns become easier to observe. When you spend time alone with awareness, you begin noticing how many of your thoughts are shaped by external influences. Expectations from society, judgments from others, and comparisons with people around you often fill the mind without you realizing it. Solitude allows you to step back from these influences and see your own life more clearly. This clarity often leads to important realizations. You may begin recognizing which habits truly serve your well-being and which ones create unnecessary stress. You may understand which relationships support your growth and which ones quietly limit it. These insights are difficult to discover when the mind is constantly surrounded by noise and distraction. Solitude also strengthens independence. When a person constantly relies on others to feel comfortable or entertained, their emotional stability becomes dependent on external conditions. But when you become comfortable with your own presence, a new kind of confidence begins to grow. This confidence is not loud or arrogant. It is a quiet sense of stability that comes from knowing you can remain peaceful even when you are by yourself. Instead of fearing silence, you begin appreciating it as a space where your mind can rest. Another important benefit of solitude is creativity. When the mind is constantly occupied with conversations, notifications, and external stimulation, it rarely has time to explore deeper ideas. But when the mind enters a quiet environment, imagination and insight begin to flow more freely. Many great discoveries, creative works, and meaningful ideas have emerged from moments of solitude. In these quiet spaces, the mind is able to wander, reflect, and connect thoughts in new ways. The Buddha also emphasized that solitude strengthens mindfulness. Mindfulness means being fully aware of the present moment without becoming lost in distractions. When you spend time alone practicing awareness of your breath, your thoughts, and your surroundings, the mind gradually becomes more attentive and calm. This practice trains the mind to remain steady even when external situations become stressful. When challenges arise, you are less likely to react impulsively because your mind has learned how to observe experiences without becoming overwhelmed by them. Of course, solitude does not mean isolating yourself from the world completely. Human connection remains important for emotional well-being. The key is balance. Healthy relationships and meaningful interaction can enrich life, but they should not replace the relationship you have with yourself. When you remove the fear of being alone, your relationships also improve. Instead of connecting with others out of fear or dependency, you begin forming connections based on genuine appreciation and respect. You choose relationships that support your well-being rather than ones that simply fill empty space. This shift allows love and friendship to become more authentic. You are no longer seeking people to complete you, but rather sharing your life with them from a place of inner stability. Gradually, solitude becomes something you value rather than something you avoid. Quiet moments become opportunities to reflect, recharge, and reconnect with what truly matters in your life. The Buddha taught that a peaceful mind is the foundation of happiness. Solitude provides the environment where this peaceful mind can develop. Without constant noise and distraction, the mind becomes clearer and more balanced. When you remove the fear of being alone, you remove one of the hidden pressures that shape many decisions in life. You stop clinging to situations that disturb your peace simply to avoid silence. Instead, you begin understanding that being comfortable with yourself is one of the greatest forms of freedom. In that freedom, where the mind is no longer afraid of stillness or solitude, happiness begins to grow in a deeper and more stable way. You no longer search for peace outside yourself because you have discovered that the calm and clarity you were seeking can exist within your own presence. And once this understanding appears, solitude no longer feels empty. It becomes a space where peace, insight, and quiet happiness can flourish. Happiness is often misunderstood as something that must be chased, earned, or discovered somewhere far away. Many people spend years trying to add more things into their lives, believing that the next achievement, the next relationship, or the next opportunity will finally bring the peace they have been searching for. But the wisdom of the Buddha reveals a very different truth. Happiness does not always come from adding more. Very often, it appears when you begin removing what does not belong in your life. Throughout these lessons, we have seen how many invisible burdens quietly disturb the human mind. A crowded mind filled with endless thoughts steals calmness. Unhealthy relationships drain emotional energy. Expectations create disappointment. Comparison weakens self-worth. Attachment to the past keeps the mind trapped in old memories. A complicated life fills the mind with noise and distraction. The constant desire to control everything creates tension and frustration. Seeking approval from others weakens inner confidence. Holding on too tightly to things that naturally change creates suffering. Chasing happiness somewhere else prevents us from appreciating the present moment. And the fear of being alone pushes many people to remain in situations that quietly disturb their peace. Each of these habits adds weight to the mind. Over time, that weight becomes so normal that many people no longer notice it. They simply accept stress, worry, and dissatisfaction as a normal part of life. But the Buddha showed that this suffering is not permanent. Much of it exists only because of the habits and attachments the mind has developed. When you begin removing these unnecessary burdens, something powerful happens. The mind becomes lighter, thoughts become calmer. Your attention returns to the present moment instead of being trapped in endless worries about the past or future. Life begins to feel simpler and clearer. Happiness then appears not as something dramatic or distant, but as a quiet state of balance within the mind. It grows in the space created when unnecessary noise, pressure, and attachment begin to fade away. This does not mean that life will suddenly become perfect or that challenges will disappear. Difficult moments will still arise, and change will always remain a natural part of life. But when the mind is no longer weighed down by unnecessary burdens, it becomes much easier to face those challenges with patience and clarity. The path to happiness is often much simpler than people imagine. It begins with awareness. Awareness allows you to see what truly belongs in your life and what does not. Once you begin recognizing the things that disturb your peace, you gain the ability to gradually release them. Sometimes the greatest transformation in life does not happen by gaining something new. Sometimes it happens when you finally have the courage to let something go. When you remove what does not belong, peace begins to appear, and when peace becomes part of your life, happiness no longer needs to be chased. It quietly grows within you.